Just from the get-go, Mr. Dintwe, we felt that it's important for us to give you a right of reply, right? Because some of those comments were quite harsh on you, particularly the comments that had to do with Bongani Bongo saying that, saying you have a problem with alcohol and that you rolled a state car, I think he said about 6 times. We felt fairness dictates that we give you a right of reply.
Good morning, Mr. Simelane, and greetings to your viewers as well. And let me just start by prefacing my reply by saying that initially and yesterday, the advice that I received was to say that it may not be proper for me to respond or do the running comments because I'm still on the stand at the Zondo Commission. However, we further felt it now this morning that remaining silent about these allegations will be doing disservice to yourselves as the media as well as to the citizens of this country. I therefore would like to make some responses to what Advocate Bongani Bongo said. But as a starting point, Mr. Simelane, is that the utterances of Mr. Bongo are reminiscent of a person who portrays a behavior, a particular behavior. And I venture to say that it is important to understand that behavior of persons who are suspected of criminality and are facing the possible consequences that may carry dire implications for their livelihood and career limitations. Such persons, upon realization that they may be approaching some kind of a cul-de-sac, often indulge in reckless utterances and behavior, which includes spreading falsehoods. We recently witnessed, and I think that is also documented, very prominent people who have been dependable for many decades, being branded as enemy agents and spies. And such utterances, such as the ones that are made by Bongo yesterday, are intended to serve some purpose. And that purpose includes, firstly, to divert attention away from the person suspected of criminality, but secondly, to cast aspersion with the intention of diluting the obvious potency of allegations they are facing. It should therefore, Mr. Simelane, be understood by yourselves and the citizens of this country that, like others before me, who face such similar illegitimate and unwarranted accusations, I am not immune from such villainous allegations. In the execution of my legal duties, I faced many unwarranted hurdles. The intensity of these accusations have exponentially increased since my resolve to approach the Zondo Commission. And believe you me, Tula Sizwe, when I say that these allegations by Bongo are nothing and nothing if compared to what I've gone through in the past 4 years that since the occupancy of this office. I will therefore like to categorically deny the allegations leveled against me by Bongo, which allegations are unsubstantiated, they are without proof, and they are also unwarranted. Those allegations only serve as a personal attack on my integrity and my competence as the Inspector General, and I put him to the proof thereof. He's the only person who can prove after I have denied these allegations.
Right.
Of crucial importance, Tula Sizwe, and I'll be done and brief, is the timing of these allegations. We have to ask ourselves, why now? If these allegations of the accidents that are unknown to myself and to the rest of the people that I'm working with, if they happened 4 years ago, why are they being reported only now? If I had a problem of alcohol 4 years ago, it means that the systems that they use to vet or to provide security clearance for myself are not intact. And then you'll ask yourself if we can say that we really had an intelligence outfit which is fit for purpose back then.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Dintwe. And I had to let you speak because, you know, it serves the purpose of you being given the right of reply, because this is not really an interview that was really about going into any other, you know, discussions. But let me take the opportunity now that I have you here and ask you about whether or not you still stand, though, by your evidence before the Zondo Commission. And I'm hoping that I won't have to be running to Mr. Bongo to give him a right of reply after you speak.
I will still confirm that and stand by the evidence that I've provided before the Zondo Commission. And I think that you will be aware, and there was also some opinion pieces which proved that I've given all the documents to prove what actually happened as far as my evidence is concerned before the Zondo Commission.
So part of your evidence was about what you were saying was a systematic program to weaken the office of the Inspector General of Intelligence, and questions of, you know, making your office and your position, you know, to report and almost subservient to the Director General of the State Security Agency. What is the status now in as far as asserting the authority and power of your office in relation to the Minister and in relation to the Director General of the SSA?
I will say that there is no change at all. In fact, if anything, the situation has worsened with the current administration. And I do have letters also to that effect to show that the political interference has intensified exponentially. And it also increased immediately when I expressed my intention to approach the Zondo Commission, or when I was actually requested by the Zondo Commission to come and give that particular evidence. So there are no changes. If there are any changes, Mr. Simelane, it will be the worsening of that kind of political interference.
Yeah.
Let me give an example of the accidents that they are referring to. If I was involved in 4 collisions, which I deny completely, and I'm putting Bongo to prove that, if I was ever involved in that, how will a minister be involved to mediate in those issues? Because those are criminal issues. So you have the executive that try by all means to catch this particular person and remove from the office. So if you ask me, I will say that Bongo is even better. It's even better because he's only making unsubstantiated allegations. The other ministers, those who succeeded him, in fact, wanted the president to suspend me and even remove me from this particular office. So these matters have gotten worse since the last time.
Those are extraordinary claims that you are making, Mr. Dintwe, about, in fact, if I quote you directly, you are saying the political interference has increased exponentially. Who's interfering? You mentioned ministers. Does that include the current minister?
It includes the current minister, Minister Yanda Zondo, and the other ministers who are responsible for the other intelligence services. That will be Minister Bekitele. I have got letters where he was interfering. I also have letters which indicate the involvement of Minister Mapisa Ngakula, who tried to micromanage me every time. I was very much surprised yesterday when there were allegations that I followed Mr. Arthur Fraser to Burundi. Mr. Simelane, I've traveled extensively, both in Africa and worldwide, but I was never in Burundi. I can assure you that. Not before I occupied this office, not after I occupied this office. So these are the examples of the executive and the director generals who follow me when I'm doing my work. And if they really, run out of ideas, they start, clutching on straws and making allegations such as I have a problem, of alcohol, and a subjective allegation which is biased and which is made by a person untrained in an area of making such a diagnosis.
But how
it is also a reminiscent
Yes.
with a shallow person who thrives on lies, gossip, and besmish.
So what are you saying to South Africans then, Mr. Dintwe? Because the Cyril Ramaphosa administration styles itself and, portrays itself as the administration that has come to clean up and basically recapacitate state institutions that were hollowed out by state capture. You are one of those institutions in terms of your oversight of the intelligence services, be it state security or military defense intelligence or, crime intelligence, the SAPS. But when you're saying that there's ministers that you're calling by name, and I suppose I'm going to have to get them to hear their side as well, if you are saying that they're trying to micromanage you, are you saying that South Africans should sit through what would essentially be a ruse, this suggestion that this is a clean-up administration?
Mr. Speaker, I think that the president is also on record. He has been on stand for 2 days, and I really don't need to repeat what he said. I think that the crux of the evidence before the Zondo Commission is that things went awry. Things moved, from good to bad. As to the turnaround thereof, we just need to sit and see. But as I'm sitting here today, I can tell you that we are still struggling to return or to reverse what was done during the time of state capture.
Let me ask you for examples.
We are still sitting without human resource. We are still sitting without sufficient budget. And you would have heard me when I was telling the Commission that we are not saying or we are not pointing fingers at anybody, but that we are doing these things so that the nation can be aware as to what are the reasons why we cannot service them fully. Because we need to provide a service to yourself, Mr. Simelane, if you are being followed unlawfully, if you are being intercepted unlawfully, if the Chief Justice of this country says that he cannot talk freely on his phone, we have to deliver a kind of a service to himself. And as I'm sitting here, I will say that things are yet to turn around.
So I'm going to have to ask you for examples, because I can imagine part of the retort saying that, you were allowed to get on the platform and make wild claims without being specific. And I mean, we should have ended this conversation a few minutes ago, but I think I owe a duty to those people that are being implicated by yourself now for you to give examples, specific examples of this micromanaging that you are alleging on the part specifically of Ministers Zondo, Cele and Mapisa-Nqakula.
Minister Zondo would have written a letter to me when she was signing one of my submissions. So what happens is that when I travel, obviously I need somebody above my position, and there is no one in my office who can approve my submissions. And this is what she writes in my submission. This is what she writes. She writes that the approval is subject to me traveling economy class, something along those lines. I can still get the letter, and I'm able to share that letter with yourself. In the other instance, I was told that when I travel and go and do some oversight work, I need to come back and report to that particular minister. But the minister also said that I disclosed information to the Zondo Commission. So it will seem as if the minister was sitting in a meeting when I was meeting, with the Zondo Commission investigators. Really an issue of interference in the operations of an independent office called the Office of the Inspector General of Intelligence. Minister Becky Cele, when I was busy investigating irregular procurement of PPEs, and which was implicating some of the senior members of the SAPS, he writes a letter to me and he tells me that he demands a particular report before he acts. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know at what stage should I proffer a report to the minister. I know exactly who should I give a particular report if there are recommendations, for instance, to the National Commissioner of Police. So I've got those letters. I've got a letter from Minister Mapisa-Nqakula saying that, please send me the redacted version of the certificates that you've submitted to the Zondo Commission. She's sitting with an unredacted version. And I was not redacting or removing some of the information from those certificates for her purposes. I was removing that for the purposes of the commission because I could not divulge information with regard to the methods of intelligence, to the sources, as well as anything that could lead to an embarrassment to this nation, which will affect our national security adversely.
Is it your argument, Mr. Dintwe, that all of these letters and correspondence by these three ministers was, one, unreasonable, unwarranted, and basically improper?
Basically rational, because I could not even understand the reasons, but they were also happening outside the legislative framework that we are working in, and you tend to ask yourself certain questions. Maybe I should make an example. It may not be significant, but for instance, the Oversight Act, which was used to appoint me to occupy this office, says that my conditions of service shall not be downvariated or shall not be lowered by anybody during my tenure. And my tenure will be 5 years. But now you've got a minister who then tells this office or tells myself what should I do and which level of conditions of service should I be pegged at.
So lastly then, just tell us about what this problem is all about. Is it a personality issue in that you appear to have had difficulties with previous ministers, Bongani Bongo included, Arthur Fraser, the former Director General of SSA, and now you seem to be having problems in the way that you work and cooperate and collaborate with the ministers in the current administration? Is it a personality issue, or is it more systemic in the sense that basically perhaps your office is not as shielded as it should be, is not as empowered as it should be, and shielded from political interference?
It is systemic. You see, Mr. Simelane, during ordinary times, I can take up to 6 months without meeting with any of the three ministers personally. And I think that if this really had to deal with our personalities, we wouldn't be sitting where we are sitting. So this office is not shielded. This office is not empowered to really do its own work. People are just doing ultra-various things. I was prevented to even enter my premises at a particular time. If anybody anywhere views this as personality problems, then I will conclude that I do not understand what personality problems mean or personality clashes. These problems are systemic because I do not even interact with these three ministers on a daily basis.
Did you raise the alarm with the relevant structures? Did you approach, for instance, the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence in Parliament? And specifically these allegations about these ministers?
I've always done that. I've elevated these particular matters. I've elevated to the state president. I've talked to the former president about these particular matters. There are presentations, there are even letters, there are documents, thick documents that I would have written to the Joint Standing Committee on intelligence. So I always report these matters, and I'm on record everywhere. I also have those documents to back up what I'm saying now.
All right. Thank you for your time. There's Sethlomamaru Dintwe, who is the Inspector General of Intelligence. And yesterday I kept making the mistake of referring to him as the Director General of the SSA. Of course, that was wrong. That was incorrect. He is the Inspector General of Intelligence. Initially, we were giving him the right of reply following allegations that were made by the former State Security Minister, Bongani Bongo. But as you heard for yourself, I think I have nothing to add. Extraordinary claims that he is making around Ministers Cele Mapisa Ngakula and Minister Ayanda Dlodlo of State Security Agency. And I guess this pushes it further then. I now owe those ministers a right of reply. And so we will be approaching their relevant media people to try and facilitate them responding to the very serious allegations that Mr. Dintwe has just made here on All Angles on ENCA.